Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I am your host, Justin Dixon. And today we've got Peter Voss on the podcast. He is the founder, CEO, and chief scientist at Aigo. They are an AI company here in Austin that are focusing on building cognitive AI. If you don't know what that is, we dig into AI pretty deep in this episode. So if you're an AI lover, this is a great one for you. He's built and sold multiple businesses over his career. He grew up in South Africa. He's been in Austin, Texas now for about 2 years. So we talk about kind of where we are in the three phases or waves of AI, what's to come from kind of the cognitive AI, agentic AI, and kind of why current large language models are not necessarily the path to freedom as they are kind of touted to be. So really cool episode. I think you'll enjoy this one. So let's get Peter on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. All right, Peter, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being a guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, let's launch into this because I'm excited to kind of talk all things AI, but maybe give everybody that's listening and watching a little bit of an overview of who you are, where you are, and what you're up to right now.
Yeah, sure. I actually started out as an electronics engineer, started my own electronics company. Then I fell in love with software, and my company turned into a software company. That ended up being quite successful. We grew from the garage to 400 people and did an IPO. So that was pretty amazing. But it's when I exited that company, it really struck me what next, what big project do I want to tackle? And what occurred to me is that software is inherently really not very smart. Software doesn't have common sense, it can't learn. So how can we build software that can actually think and learn and reason the way humans do, software that has common sense? And of course, that is what ultimately AI is about, or that was the original dream of AI, to build thinking machines. So I embarked on a 5-year journey to study intelligence, to basically really deeply understand what is special about human intelligence, studying theory of knowledge, epistemology, what is free will, what is consciousness, how do we learn anything, and how does our intelligence differ from animals? What do IQ tests measure, and how do children learn, and all of that? So the combination of that, I came up with a design for an AI that can think and learn and reason like a human, on paper. And then I started, and really over the last 20 years, I've run 4 different AI companies, 2 of them in the development mode and 2 of them in commercial mode. And it was really doing development of the core technology, and then we kind of ran out of money and had enough to commercialize. So then we pivoted to commercial company. 5 years go by, you build a company, and then we sold it and go back to development, back to commercial. So we're back in a development phase now, and we believe we are actually very close now to having a system that can think, learn, and reason like a human. I think we're just maybe 2 years away.
So there's a lot to unpack there. I guess to go back, you mentioned you started a business 20 years ago, or a company you founded, and then from a garage and grew to 400 people, and then IPO'd. What was the name of that company, and what was the focus of that business?
Yeah, that I was actually living in South Africa at the time,
okay.
So that was not here. The company actually, strangely enough, was called Ohio Group Limited, but it's kind of an accident that we ended up with that name. We didn't actually have any particular connection to America or Ohio at that time. We just, the company started having an agency for a computer called an Ohio Scientific. And the name stuck. We started building reputation, and then, okay, we'll stick with the name. And this is a software company. Well, actually a systems company. We supplied complete solutions, hardware and software, to small to medium-sized businesses. And the software that I developed, or that we developed, is basically an ERP system, a very comprehensive software system for, as I say, small to medium-sized companies to manage their business, inventory control, payroll, accounting, production planning, even, and so on. And that was the company, and that was listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange.
Got it. And then so I'm assuming that kind of helped to fund a lot of these developmental projects that you have been working on over the last 20
Correct.
years.
Yeah, that allowed me to take off the 5 years and really study, and then get the initial AI company, hired 10 people. And for 5 years, we actually started turning my ideas into actual prototypes and into, like a framework. And then at the end of that 5-year period, we, on the one hand, didn't have enough money to kind of continue the core development. But on the other hand, we had enough technology to actually commercialize something. So the company then pivoted into commercial era, automating call center. Quite successfully. And that company grew to about 80 people or so. But I ended up with investors that really had no interest in the AI part of it. They just wanted to grow revenue and profitability, and eventually sell the company. So we decided to sell the company so that I could get back to working on AI. And in fact, the type of AI that I'm working on to build thinking machines is what is called artificial general intelligence, or AGI, which I'm sure a lot of people have now heard about over the last few years, with Sam Altman and various people bragging about that, they're about to get AGI. So AGI is really, instead of narrow AI, instead of having an AI that can just do one particular thing, like play chess or do Jeopardy or, do protein folding or whatever, which has been really what almost all of the work in AI over the last 60 years has been narrow AI, where you actually take human intelligence and computer software to solve a particular problem. It's not that the software itself is smart enough how to figure things out. It's really the human intelligence writing a program, whereas AGI is about building a machine that can learn by itself, to play chess, or to do customer support, or to do programming, or to do administration, or whatever, like a human, like we can teach ourselves to do many different tasks, and that's really what AGI ultimately is.
And so before we jump headfirst into AI and where we are in the life cycle and what it is and all that fun stuff, you're working on a new company, Aigo, right now. Can you kind of share a little bit about what that is, or is that kind of your developmental kind of brainchild that kind of help as you're looking at this AGI, and you call it cognitive AI on the website?
Right. So Aigo actually did start out as a commercial company, and we ran for about 5 years as a commercial company, and we actually ran it commercially until just about a year ago, when we decided to put our commercial business on hold, because we really, really want to work on getting to AGI. And the commercial company might be worth a few $100 million, but AGI is multi-trillion dollars. But more importantly for me is the benefit that AGI can provide to humanity, and we can certainly talk about that. So it seemed just like a distraction to be running a commercial business, which is a full-time job, to get a commercial company to be successful and to grow. So Aigo started out commercially, but for the last year we've basically gone back. We essentially in kind of stealth mode. I mean, we're not total stealth, because people kind of know what we're doing, but not specifically what we're doing.
And I guess so I'm always curious about people's origin stories. Like, How did you kind of get into being an entrepreneur? Because it sounds like you kind of have been doing entrepreneurial ventures for decades in South Africa and obviously here in the States now.
Yeah.
Like, were you always an entrepreneur? Like from birth, you were like, hey, I wanted to start a business, or like, how did you kind of get that bug to kind of start a business?
Yeah, I'm one of these strange animals that I actually very much enjoy doing the business side of things and running a business, but I'm also, knee deep in the technology. So I'm chief scientist and CEO, and I've always had those dual roles. But how I got into it, sometimes people ask me sort of what are some of the big regrets I have in life, and the thing that comes to mind is, I'm sorry that I only started my first company when I was 25. I should have started it when I was 15.
Yeah.
So, I was, I only started my first company at 25. But, I've always had an interest in electronics. That's how I got into it. And then, as I say, working with electronics and starting to program chips, fell in love with software. And then my focus really shifted from electronics to software development.
Got it. All right. Well, let's dig into AI. Most of us, and myself included, think AI was started really kind of 2-3 years ago when we got access to ChatGPT, right? And that's obviously not the case. So, maybe what is AI at its simplest kind of core? And how long has AI been utilized in commercial settings? And then I would love to kind of dig into kind of more current state stuff.
Yeah, sure. Actually, the term AI was coined exactly 70 years ago. So, that's when people first sort of came up with that concept of having machines that have intelligence. And the original idea was really to build thinking machines. The idea was to build machines that can think and learn and reason like humans. And in fact, the people who coined the term originally, John McCarthy and a few others, thought that they could crack this problem in like a few years, 70 years ago. Now, they were obviously super optimistic. Well, computers can do all this logic stuff very well, so, surely we can get to human level intelligence soon. Now, of course, it turned out to be much, much, much harder to build machines that can think and reason. And so what happened, the field of AI really turned into the field of narrow AI, as I mentioned just now, is instead of trying to build thinking machines, what people did is they picked one particular thing that requires human intelligence, whether that's container optimization or medical diagnosis or playing chess or whatever. And they pick this one problem and then using human intelligence, write a program that can solve that particular thing. But, IBM's Deep Blue, which was the world chess champion in, I think, the late 90s or 2000, around about 2000, it could beat the world champion in chess, but it couldn't even play checkers. It really didn't have general intelligence at all. So actually, after I finished my 5 years of research and I was ready to start implementing things, I got together with a few other people who also felt that the time was ripe for us to go back to the original dream of AI, to build thinking machines that have general intelligence. And we decided to write a book on the topic. And 3 of us got together to come up with a title for the book. And we decided on artificial general intelligence, or AGI, in 2002. And, we didn't know that the term would actually eventually take off. But yeah, that was in 2002. 3 of us coined the term. And that was really the start of focusing on AGI. But a very, very small group of people. The mainstream in AI were still pursuing narrow AI. And in a sense, as broad as ChatGPT is or large language models are, they are still actually quite narrow because they cannot teach themselves new things. And they are particularly tuned and fine-tuned, to kind of have a conversation with you or generate pictures or whatever. So we're still kind of in the era of narrow AI in some important sense. Now, there's actually an interesting model that DARPA came up with, and they call it the 3 waves of AI. And what they mean by the 3 waves of AI, the first wave is what they call good old-fashioned AI. Now, what that is, those are systems that are really based on logic, that have kind of a logic flow, a flow chart. So that would include expert systems. You asked when did AI become commercial? Probably the first commercial uses of AI were probably around the 70s when people started building expert systems, 70s, 80s. And there was actually quite a lot of excitement at that time. A lot of money went in, and then was a big disappointment. They call it the winter of AI, where you basically couldn't get funding again because it just didn't live up to expectations. So that was the first wave of AI, which is logic-based systems, and IBM's chess-playing computer would also fit into that realm. Now, the second wave is the wave we are riding right now. And that is all about big data statistical systems. The large language models, deep learning, machine learning, generative AI, they all fit into this bucket of statistical neural networks, which are very different from the first wave, the pure logic-based systems. And so, and that hit us like a tsunami, that wave, basically, when people figured out how they could, just by throwing more training data at it and more compute resources at a problem, could get spectacular results. It would just get better and better. And that sort of really had a breakthrough about 12 years ago, initially with deep learning, where image recognition became very good, which kind of opened up possibilities for autonomous vehicles. I mean, we're still not quite there, but it started to make this feasible, by having good vision or object categorization through vision. So that's about 12, 13 years ago. And then more recently, there was a breakthrough of what's called transformers, which was a particular mechanism to more accurately predict sequences of words, which is what large language models are based on. And so that sort of really had the breakthrough, as we know, with ChatGPT about 3-4 years ago. But this is all still very much big data, a lot of number crunching. To give you an idea on how much data actually goes into it, the current models that are being used in ChatGPT and similar systems are trained with 30 trillion pieces of information. I mean, it's a mind-boggling number. They basically take all the books they can find, everything that's on the internet, all the, good, bad, and ugly. I mean, they use Twitter if they can get their hands on it, or whatever, whatever email and stuff they can find. 30 trillion pieces of information are basically the number crunched for hundreds of millions of dollars worth of compute to build these models. And the models don't know what's good, what's bad, what's ugly in there, and this is part of the problem that you have with them. But if you compare that to a human, a child can learn language and reasoning with a few million words. Not 30 trillion.
Right.
And a child can do that with 20 watts of brain power, not 20 gigawatts of nuclear power stations, So there's something, it's a very, very brute force approach that these large language models use. And they've achieved some spectacular results and spectacular successes, but they're also kind of absurdly expensive. It's really a brute force approach. So that's the second wave that we really are in now. What DARPA called the third wave are systems truly that can learn like a human, that can learn incrementally and adapt, that are adaptive. So that don't need 30 trillion pieces of information, that can learn, sort of one sentence at a time, as it were, and are much closer to what I've described as a human, 20 watts and a few million words. to get to language competence and reasoning, and that is cognitive AI. So it's really based on how cognition works, whereas large language models, statistical systems, don't care about what intelligence is or how cognition works or whatever. It's just, hey, if we can have more training data, more compute, we get a more competent system. Now, with ChatGPT 5 just released, we've sort of now really have an inflection point where it's become much, much more obvious that you can't continue scaling. That, they have systems that are trained with 10 times more data or computational power, but they're nowhere near 10 times smarter. So they are now diminishing returns, and Gary Marcus calls that hitting the wall. It's really diminishing returns. So they've had their run, large language models, but it's becoming clear that they're not going to get us to the kind of intelligence that we really want.
And so we're in this kind of second wave, and thank you for that rundown, because that is very helpful to kind of see, A, how long AI has been kind of used and even kind of thought about, and B, kind of where we are now. So if kind of the GPT-5 and ChatGPT is not going to get us just by brute force putting more data and more learning into the system, at what point do we get to the cognitive gen AI, and how do we get there? Like, is it more data? Is it more compute? Or like, do we have to have a breakthrough that we don't even know about to get to that next phase?
Yeah, we're really in an interesting position now. VCs have put literally hundreds of billions of dollars into generative AI and large language models, and they're committed to building ever bigger data centers, and they sort of started that ball rolling. So it's very difficult for them to actually acknowledge that this is a road to nowhere. And as far as ultimately the kind of intelligence we want. And I'd like to quote the chief scientist of Meta, of Facebook, Jan LeCun. Well, in fact, he's just been sidelined. I think he's no longer the chief AI scientist. But, he was for last 10 years or something, Jan LeCun. And he says, and I quote, "Large language models are an off-ramp to AGI, a distraction, a dead end." And in fact, he's telling his students not to study Gen AI or large language models. He says that's not the future. And I totally agree with that. But the problem is there is so much momentum, there's so much vested money that it's very difficult for people to kind of say, well, we're on the wrong track. They're still hoping that somehow this will work itself out. So while it's becoming clearer that large language models are not going to get us to the kind of intelligence that we ultimately want, what is not generally accepted at all or clear is what the alternative is. Now, to me, it's very clear. It's cognitive AI. It's going back to first principles and saying, you start with understanding intelligence. What makes human intelligence so special? To really deeply understand that, and then to build systems that meet these requirements of intelligence. But that's a first principles approach, and it requires people to really be comfortable with epistemology and psychology, cognitive psychology, and so on. And the current experts in the field, it's completely foreign language to them. They can only think in terms of statistics, mathematics, logic, and so on. So when you say when will we get to cognitive AI or to the kind of intelligence that we ultimately want, it really depends on how quickly people realize what a good alternative is, that the third wave, that cognitive AI, is the way to go. At the moment, we're not getting any love at all. There's basically no money, no VC funds flowing into cognitive AI. Very, very few people are working on it. And because statistical AI sucked all of the oxygen out of the air.
Yeah.
I want to quickly share a particular story from our company. We had a brilliant intern work for us who loved our cognitive AI approach. He went back to do his PhD. He couldn't get a sponsor for cognitive AI.
Huh.
So he ended up doing machine learning, deep learning, and now, 7 years later, he's a machine learning expert,
Yeah.
So it's really how quickly that area gets funded. And it's not that it requires huge amounts of money, because the beauty of a cognitive AI is it doesn't need 30 trillion pieces of information. It can learn with, just a few million words. So it requires much, much less computing power, it has many other benefits as well. Because you need so much less training data, you can concentrate on the quality of the data instead of quantity. So you can curate the data much better, and you end up with a system that doesn't have half of its brain filled up with garbage.
Yeah.
And so, you need much less computing power. You have a much better control over the quality of the data, and it can run on a local machine. It can run on a normal computer. It doesn't need massive computers to do that. But that knowledge hasn't really sort of filtered through to the VC community.
Does I guess to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole with like the kind of third wave here, like do you think, based on your research and everything that you've looked into, is that something that we can, if we build this machine that can think for itself and learn and, not really need trillions of pieces of input into the system, is that something that we as humans, that maybe this thing gets smarter than we are, can we control it, or are we in like a Terminator, Skynet, kind of future that we're kind of just driving ourselves into?
Yeah, of course, that's a really crucial question. Is AI going to be beneficial, or is it, some people claim, going to kill us all? Now, I come down very strongly on the side of that it's going to be extremely beneficial to humanity, that it's going to help us flourish, and I can certainly expand on how and why. But the problem is the other side, people claiming that AI is going to be dangerous for us, unfortunately have had a lot of money. They've had a lot of money. They've have over $1 billion of funding to fund various organizations that basically live for trying to scare us and saying, hey, if you give us money, we'll try and prevent it, in some way. But when you actually look at their arguments that they have, they're actually very, very weak of why AI would be dangerous for us. One of the arguments they use is that the system can't be aligned, that it cannot understand what we really want or what's good for humans. That's called the alignment problem. And that's one part of it. But the argument is actually extremely weak, because on the one hand, they are positing that there's a system that is so smart that it can outfox any defense we throw at it. It can basically, we cannot stop it because it's so smart. But on the other hand, it's so stupid that it can't understand what humans really want, that it can't ask. So that's one of the arguments that's really quite pathetic. And, yet very famous people, Elon Musk has fallen into this trap and believing that and so on. The other part of the alignment problem is that they believe AIs are going to have motivation like humans, that they will just become power hungry and want to dominate everything. But there's really no evidence for that. I mean, the reason humans have these negative traits is because we are driven by our genes for reproduction and survival. Otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation here if we weren't driven by reproduction and survival. But most of the negative things in humanity are exactly because of that. sort of tribal things, the ego having to dominate, and things of that nature. And we're not very good at rational thinking. We tend to be still quite emotional animals. Now, an AI isn't going to have those characteristics. There's no reason to build in a survival instinct or reproduction instinct. There's no reason you'd want to build systems that have a big ego and always have to be right. I mean, it makes no sense. Right. Those systems aren't going to be very useful to us. But unfortunately, these nonprofits that have sprung up to, try and scare us of the risks of AI, they don't actually build any AGI or systems. So they're quite disconnected, sort of ivory towerish, from the reality of what kind of systems you actually build. Now, of course, there are some risks, but a lot of the risks that we are seeing right now with AIs are because they're not smart enough. Where an AI might, like we've had this tragic incident where an AI encouraged somebody to commit suicide. Now, they're doing that because they're not smart enough to understand the situation. That clearly they shouldn't be encouraging the person to do it. So once we have cognitive AI that can have a much better understanding of human psychology and what is appropriate in a different situation, those sort of things are going away. They're not going to have hallucinations and just say completely stupid things.
So I guess I'm curious a little bit about on that, just kind of staying in that vein, like, if there are people that think it could become this negative thing, I would imagine there are, dangerous people in the world that if they got a weapon as powerful as a, cognitive AI tool, could use it for not great things, right? So I guess but I guess to your point about it being so smart that we can't protect ourselves, like, is that kind of a, not a great argument to kind of say, like, well, what if we have a really smart bad person that wants to use it for bad things?
Right. And of course we can have that, but I think that's another one of the mistakes that a lot of people make, that they think of, there will be one big AI. If China gets it, they'll have this colossal AI that can do bad things to us. But what we're finding with ChatGPT 5 and large language models is you cannot actually, there's a certain optimum size of AI for effectiveness. And the future with cognitive AI is that you'll have millions, billions of AIs, not this sort of, one massive AI. So, which means as long as you have a lot more good guys and bad guys, you obviously have AIs that are, also defenses for it. There's actually a second argument, actually two other arguments I want to just highlight here. One of them is a little bit of a kind of a negative view on it, but I think a realistic one, and that is the point that maybe we need AGI to save us from ourselves. That we need more intelligence. I mean, if you just look around the world now, I mean, especially what's happening now, we are doing some, humanity is doing some really, really stupid things. Maybe we need, more people to have a personal AI that can talk sense to them, like a little angel on your shoulder and sort of say, is this really the person you want to support or the idea you want to support, and who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, to help people think that through, and what is going to be beneficial for yourself in the long run. Aren't you shooting yourself in the foot by maybe supporting a policy that's destructive? And that brings me to sort of the other point I want to make that is quite controversial, but I'm happy to defend it, but it just takes some time, is that I truly believe that improved intelligence or increased intelligence improves morality. It makes people better. So if we have AI to advise us, and I'll just very quickly go through kind of three different areas in which that's true. First of all, many of the things we do that we regret, and you can say are bad, we do emotionally. We might make an investment. We might break off a relationship. We, start a fight with somebody as an emotional reaction. And AI can help us highlight this and say, "Whoa, just sleep on it. Don't do that. Right now." So it can help us in that way by not having that emotional impulse. And it by itself will not have those emotional impulses. The second thing is we tend to make decisions with limited information because it's hard for us to kind of really get to the bottom of things. So we have this confirmation bias. We might read an article and say, "Oh, yeah, I agree with this." Whereas an AI will be much better at objectively looking at both sides of the story and, really giving us the facts and say, "Oh, yeah, the thing that resonates with you actually isn't true, or you've got to listen to the counterpoint." So basically being able to gather good information, objective information. And the third area is we are not very good at logical thinking. That's an evolutionary afterthought. And an AI, again, will be very good at thinking through the consequences. So I say, well, yes, you can do this now, but is this likely to give you the results that you ultimately want? Is this likely to give you the outcome that you want? So there's so many ways in which a rational AI can help us basically make better decisions and therefore live better lives.
So there's a couple things I wanted to kind of tease out from that. So I guess going back to where we are now in the current stage of AI and this kind of wave 2 of LLMs and things like that, what are some really interesting use cases that we should be thinking about it, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're somebody that works in a W-2 job, you're a new grad, you're 80 years old, whatever, like what are some ways that we should be leveraging it now that maybe we're not, and obviously not just to write a better email or anything like that. Like what are some really good things that we can use it for now so that we are prepared for, or, somewhat prepared for, the third wave of kind of cognitive, AI?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, these tools are amazing as long as you have a human in the loop who actually can think about it. Yeah. But, for doing research, in fact, 2 people I know just recently wrote books, and they say it's cut down the time of writing a book from, 2 years to like 4 months or something, and with a lot more footnotes and a lot better researched and so on, where they keep feeding their drafts back into a large language model and get different summaries, have it critique it and so on, like an editor basically, And but you need to know how to use the tools. What is the right tool? One of the problems is they tend to deteriorate if you use the same tool and you keep feeding it more and more information. At a certain point, they kind of just break down and go nuts, And then you basically have to just say, okay, shut that down and start again from scratch,
Yeah.
And be aware of hallucinations and so on. So basically, for research, I mean, if I'm trying to learn something about a topic, that really has become a lot simpler than just doing Google search before or trying to read books, because you can ask for a summary of a particular topic, but then also follow up specific questions. You have things you don't understand. Can you explain this more, and so on. Really useful for that kind of education, brainstorming, summarization, and so on. A lot of people use them for coding. I think it depends what kind of coding you do. In the work that we're doing, I've found it not particularly useful because 2/3 of the time it'll give you the right answer, but 1/3 of the time it'll give you the wrong answer, and you end up spending more because you don't know that it's the wrong answer. You'll then spend more time trying to debug the thing, and the problem is the code that these coding systems create is really not scrutable to humans. So if it works, it's okay. If the system can fix it by itself, it's okay. But if you have to try and then go in and figure out what's wrong, you basically pretty much can't do that because of the way the code is written. It's not architected properly. So as I say, there are applications where code generation is useful, but there are also a lot of applications where there aren't. And then these agentic AIs where you build agents, for example, in enterprise to do workflow optimization, they tend to require a lot of engineering to get them right, to get rid of hallucinations, to set up external databases, interface to deal with security issues, and so on. So it takes a lot of effort. So typically only for large companies that have high volume is this justified. And also, if anything changes in your company, you get new products, or you have new business rules, or you buy another company, or shut down a division, or whatever, you have to go back again and re-engineer the system. Or if your vendor upgrades the system, you're going from ChatGPT 4 to 5 or whoever you're using, it tends to kind of invalidate your system. So there's a huge amount of maintenance, expensive and difficult maintenance that needs to be done to set up these systems to work in enterprise. So, knowing when to use it, when not to use it is really important. But clearly the tools can be very, very useful.
Yeah. So I'm in the world of recruiting. So that's kind of my background. And, a lot of people keep asking me, what should we be telling the younger generation that are in high school, college right now? What jobs should they do? What skills should they learn in this world of AI? Because depending on who you talk to, we've got a few years until, we are overrun by AI. AI can do literally every job on the planet. And we get into this utopia world where everybody has a high standard of living income because money is not relevant, because AI does all the things, right? So I guess the first part of that question is like, what are some things that young kids should be learning, knowing that they may have a potentially difficult time in the workforce if AI becomes really good at doing entry-level jobs, which we're already starting to see, entry-level jobs be outsourced to AI. And I think as it gets better and better, it could grow.
Yeah, clearly knowing AI, knowing the tools and keeping up to date with them has to be good advice.
Yeah.
Because the better you can use the tools, the more comfortable you are with them, and keeping up to date can really only benefit you. But more importantly, I mean, we've already seen over the last few decades, you really don't expect to have a lifelong job anymore. Like you start at GM and retire 40 years later.
Right.
So I think this entrepreneurial spirit, being able to kind of manage different tasks, different jobs, different interests, being flexible, is just super, super important. That however the world changes, that you are good at adapting and learning, which is of course what human intelligence is about. So I think that's really, really important, because and I mean, I do believe that we will get AGI in definitely less than 10 years, and unless something dramatically goes wrong with society. In fact, I believe we will probably have it in less than 5 years. And then many jobs, AIs will be able to do them better and cheaper than humans. I think and I see that as a world of radical abundance, but it's going to be very unevenly distributed. First of all, across the world, but even within America, there are going to be many communities and older people and so on that aren't plugged into this modern world. And I think for what a lot of people, I think, will want to do, is they'll have to work much fewer hours in order to cover their living expenses with radical abundance. Of course, that's a whole another topic, but I do believe that. And what people will want to do, a lot of people want to do, is to help others get the benefits of this new society, of this new technology. And, that I think is what a lot of people will end up doing, whether it's in America or, I lived in Africa for many years. The amount of human interaction, the interface that's needed to introduce this technology and the benefits of that technology to the rest of the world, I think is going to be very satisfying but also very necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I talked to a gentleman at a conference who was like a PhD in machine learning and AI, and we were talking about, this 10-year time horizon into this utopian universe where everybody,
Mm.
you know, doesn't have to work because AI does everything. I said, well, what happens between now and then, right? I feel like there's going to be a lot of pain. There's going to be a lot of people losing jobs because AI is being able to do them, but there's not enough jobs to give them. There's that like buffer period between then and now where, like you said, it's going to be kind of distributed, unevenly across
Mm.
the ages and across the people that are, deep in this technology and not. I guess, how do you think about that as as something that's very pioneering, this evolution to this utopian future, knowing that there's going to be some people left behind and caught in the wake, just like every revolution that we've gone through, industrial revolution, technology revolution, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. So I think it is important who drives this technology as well. Unfortunately, right now, the large companies are all just trying to outdo each other in terms of, revenue, and you are the product, and, they really just pay lip service to the benefit of society. And what I see the benefits of cognitive AI, because it can run on a small computer, it can run on, I think it can probably run on a smartphone now, or certainly in a few years, it'll be able to run a smartphone, will allow us to give everyone an AGI that, basically every person will have it, who can help them with that transition, help them, think things through and find out, how they can best benefit from this and how they can cope psychologically and financially. I think there is going to be also significant, as soon as we see unemployment rising and we do see this sort of imbalance, there's going to be tremendous pressure to have something like an AI tax on, universal income. I mean, I don't like that idea that much because there are problems with it as well. But we can ask our AIs to come up with better.
Yeah, right. What's the solution that you're ruining all these people's jobs or taking all these people's jobs? What would you do? And ask it to solve that problem.
Yeah. So, I mean, I turn it on its head, because you ask almost any person, would you like to win the lottery? Mm-hmm. And of course, most people, unless they're already millionaires or they're just trying to be difficult, will say, yes, I'd love to win the lottery. And to me, AGI is like everybody winning the lottery, that you don't have to work anymore. So what would you do with your life? Now, some people will just spend a lot more time with their families, or pursue something, A lot of people, as I say, will want to help others to get the benefits of the technology. So, that's really the answer, that as this abundance is created, yes, we do need to be smart about helping people through it, and clearly it's going to be disruptive. There's no question about it. Yeah. But then, without that, what kind of future are we heading to right now without AI?
Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of the counter argument. Maybe we need AGI to help save us from ourselves.
Yeah, no, I totally. There's a lot of hopefully there's a lot smarter people working on it than myself that can help drive this in the right direction. I guess you hear about like AI and all the AI kind of hype right now from the large language model companies and investors. Mm-hmm. You kind of talked about this earlier, but I want to just kind of circle back to it, where they're talking about companies are cutting headcount because they're leveraging AI. Obviously ChatGPT 4 was supposed to be, that exponential leap, sorry, ChatGPT 5 was supposed to be that exponential leap that we saw from 3 to 4. That obviously didn't happen. It took a lot longer even to get ChatGPT 5 out and all of that. So I guess, is there, because you talked about this kind of being an exit to nowhere, this kind of large language kind of model scenario, do we see the current AI that we have, the ChatGPT 5s of the world, is that kind of the peak of what we're going to get out of that evolution until we get the money to flow from the large language model into the kind of cognitive, AI sphere?
Yes. Yes, I believe that absolutely, and I think we're hearing that from a lot of different sources. Even Sam Altman, has we're no longer talking AGI, and it's going to be a lot less, and so there are going to be more jobs that can be replaced by this careful engineering, workflow optimization, and so on. But then also a lot of the headlines where companies are laying off thousands of people. It's often a good excuse to also say, like Salesforce, for example, they are selling AI systems with all the services. So for them to say, oh, we could lay off so many thousands of people, but companies do this right sizing every other year anyway. We're not really seeing this in the unemployment numbers in any significant way. So I don't see the current technology having a very significant impact on employment.
I know we talked a little bit about kind of agents, and you kind of shed some light on some things that I hadn't really thought about around the maintenance and the updating and all of that fun stuff. Do you think that the kind of workforce of the near future will be, if I think about like an HR person, right, or a manager having, human employees on their org chart and then agents, on their org chart where they have to then manage the agent, or manage somebody that manages the agents and things like that. Do you see that as a potential realistic future in certain jobs?
No. Not in any significant number. It will be your IT department basically that it's going to be computer technology that needs to be managed by IT to do these workflows, because your HR manager simply isn't going to have the technical knowledge to make sure that these agents can that you could kind of train them or reconfigure them if they need to do something different. They kind of need to go back to the factory, as it were.
Got it.
So if you have a particular workflow that's been set up to, for example, in HR to go through resumes and spit them out, but that's no different from AI software that you might have had in HR 5 years ago. That looks for keywords and so on. This is just going to be a bit smarter, or that can automatically reply. I mean, we are currently recruiting in our company, and it's really quite terrible that almost every application is made by ChatGPT. And we have very specific requirements in our job profile, and we say you've got to read this white paper that I wrote and give me some feedback. So people feed the white paper into ChatGPT, but we're seeing like they all come up with the same kind of bullet points, and they then say, oh, I'm the ideal candidate for this because the blah blah blah, but the wording is all the same. So we can we're kind of learning now how to say, oh, okay, fine, now this is too good to be true. So ChatGPT, forget about it.
I've been in the recruiting world for over 18 years now, and every year something technology was going to take the recruiter's job, and even now with all the AI, you can hire an AI bot to apply to a job for you, right? A lot of the clients that I work with are startups and small businesses, and they're coming to me more now because they're like, instead of getting 100 applicants, they're getting 1,000, and 99% of them are fake or junk or whatever. And a small business can't manage or review 1,000 applicants and all that stuff. So it's I don't want to.
You don't have AI software good enough.
That's right.
To do that, it needs a human.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it's a fascinating dilemma that some companies are in right now that are like, AI is great, but it's also making hiring a challenge. Not only are you getting more applicants, you're also getting candidates that have their phone, and AI open, and so they're asked a question. They have AI, kind of calculating the response, and then they read the response. And
it is really it's tough, and this is actually generating a lot of new jobs. Exactly to deal with essentially the problems or the garbage that's created by large language models as well.
Yeah. So we've been diving down AI obviously for the last 50 minutes or so. I guess as we kind of round out the conversation, Aigo is in this kind of, call it stealthish mode at the moment, very kind of research focused. What are, if we jumped on a podcast 12 months from now, and what's maybe one or two, three things that you would like to achieve within Aigo as a company that would make that podcast, really exciting to come on and talk about?
Oh, absolutely. So we're not actually in research mode at all. We did a lot of the research, in fact, going back 20 years. We are really in development mode. We are cranking up the IQ and the knowledge and the learning ability of our system. In the commercial realm, there was a lot of external engineering we did as well, that to set up a system. Our best known client was 1-800-Flowers, Harry and David group of companies. We did all of the chat support for them. But, we had to feed in all of the ontologies and business rules and so on. And that was all done manually. Whereas if you or I wanted to do customer support at 1-800-Flowers, we'd go into their call center, read the manuals, listen to some calls, ask some questions, and then we would be able to do it. Yeah. So that's the idea of AGI, that it literally can learn as quickly or quicker than a human to do a job. So what we are doing now is we are improving the self-learning ability of the system to be able to teach itself, basically. And the way we're doing that is we're actually doing it like from a child, to learn the fundamentals of language and reasoning from a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old. So we are building the curriculum to teach our system like a child. And we're currently roughly at the 5-year-old level that we're working at. So a year from now, we are currently looking for a Series A to expand our team. Our team is only 12 people, and we really need another 40 people to, fill all the gaps that we have in terms of development that we're doing. So ideally, a year from now, I'd be talking, yes, we got our Series A, we hired another 40 people. We are now at 7-year-old level, and within a few months we're going to be at 10-year-old level, and then you're pretty much done.
Yeah,
because a smart 10-year-old that isn't coping with hormones,
or
will be able
distracted
to
by their smartphone.
will be able to basically do call center work, or very quickly teach itself to do programming or accounting or management or whatever, So our aim is within the next, we believe it'll take 2 years for us to get to this 10, 12-year-old, and then basically we're done. I mean, then the rest is just, minor improvements, basically, because all the problems of cognition, you pretty much have to solve by 10, 12-year-old, theory of mind and rational thinking and so on.
And then I guess theoretically you could teach somebody to a certain level, or teach the AI to a certain level. And then would that then kind of like, okay, if we want to hire a call center representative, they need this base level of knowledge that they can then teach themselves this job. But if we want to hire a professor or a software engineer or a salesperson, they need to have a different level of learning, or is it just like, once it hits a certain level, it's just going to be able to learn anything?
No, I think that's exactly right. So our sort of standard product will be, say, a college graduate with a broad range of general knowledge and very good thinking and learning ability. But then you will have specialists in biochemistry and software engineering and whatever, accounting, that will already then be specialized in that area, and you can take then those sort of almost call them templates almost,
Yeah.
and they can then be put into a particular company and learn the specifics of that company, or that domain that they're in very quickly by themselves. So yes, there'll be basically different layers, but the standard product will basically be the starting point will be a smart college graduate.
Got it. So you're building an AI college, and you'll be pumping out these AI college students, and then they'll go off into the world and learn new things and help
Well,
companies.
the beauty with AI is you only have to build one,
Right? Because then it teaches
and
itself.
then you can make 1 billion copies of it.
Yeah.
That's and then we'll work with different partners who will then who already have expertise in a particular area, whatever it might be, whether it's real estate or programming or accounting or whatever, who can then basically give them that additional curriculum to become specialists in that field. But very much for the benefit of humanity, we like the kind of aligned Series A investor we're looking for is somebody who also believes that pretty much everyone in the world should be able to have a basic AGI that is their own, what we call a personal assistant. And the reason I double up on the word personal is the first personal is you own it. It serves your agenda, not some mega corporations, not Aigo. It really truly is yours and serves your agenda. And the second personal is it's hyper personalized to you. You share with it whatever history, goals, dreams, and things you have, however much you want to. And also whom you want to share what information with. So it really becomes more like an exocortex, like an extension of your own brain. But you control it, you own it. And we believe that will be highly beneficial to humanity because it will help people also cope with the changes, that are coming, because you'll have that extra helper, that little angel on your shoulder.
Yeah, I guess not to counter that or whatever. Do you see that as a potential kind of crutch where people just won't engage with humans anymore? They've got this personal assistant that can learn anything. You can tell it anything. It'll act, and respond like a human. And so why do I need to go out into the world where I've got, and I'm sure you'll be able to create a face and an online persona and all of that fun stuff. Like, will that potentially create a more kind of closed off society?
Yeah. No, very good question, very important question. And there are two aspects to it. The one is, yes, people could potentially get lazy in thinking. So one of the things that our system, our AGI needs to understand is for humans to flourish, we do need to be able to think. We need to retain our own agency. And there are a number of ways of doing that, and sort of the Socratic method, is instead of just telling somebody what they should do, is to engage in a dialogue that the person also owns their decisions, that they've thought it through with whatever help they had. So that's the one aspect. The other aspect, of course, is to encourage people to be able to spend much more time in the real world, interacting with other people. Hopefully people will learn to appreciate that again. COVID sort of really hit us pretty hard in that regard, but also just the demands of current workplace doesn't leave a lot of time for a lot of people. And, so that if you have a lot more free time, I would imagine people would be more open to interacting with others.
Yeah. Well, we will see. We're all on this train barreling a million miles an hour towards AI at some form or fashion. So hopefully we get the good stuff and not all the bad stuff, essentially. But we're all along for the ride, essentially. So this has been a really cool episode because you're obviously a very smart person in general, but also around AI, and also you're an entrepreneur. So it's always cool to kind of talk about people's stories. So thank you very much, Peter. Wanted to end the podcast like I do with every guest, just asking a 3-pack of questions. So first question here is, what is an influential book or podcast, or just something maybe that people can learn more about AI that you would recommend to the audience?
There's a book by Douglas Hofstadter called The Mind's Eye, which is like a really neat exploration of different ideas of how AI is done. I found that quite fascinating when I read it many years ago.
Got it. Love it. Mind's Eye. Awesome. Next question. What's your favorite thing to do outside of work?
Riding motorcycles.
Interesting. I definitely did not see that coming. That's awesome. What kind of motorcycle do you have?
I actually have too many, but the one that's most fun is actually a racing bike, BMW 1000 RR, 200 horsepower, 185 miles an hour. So
wow,
that's fun.
Very cool. Maybe I'll see you buzzing around Austin on a motorcycle. Not the safest roads on 35 or Mopac or anything like that, but I have seen people like buzzing through the traffic in between cars. So maybe that was you the other day buzzing by me. Awesome. Last question here. Favorite vacation spot?
I did some scuba diving in the Maldives, and that was amazing. Not that I've been back there, but that really was amazing. Also did scuba diving in the Red Sea, and those were actually the two best spots for scuba diving that I came across. Better than the Great Barrier Reef even.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, the Maldives has been on my wife and I's kind of list of places to check out. So that may have moved it up a notch or two as far as that goes. So awesome. Peter, again, thank you very much. If people want to reach out to you, learn about what you're doing at Aigo, pick your brain about AI, anything like that, like what's typically the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, I always love talking to people about that. LinkedIn or X. Or they can email me at peter@aigo.ai. So very easy to get hold of me. And I've got quite a lot of articles out on Substack and also on medium.com.
Very cool. Well, we will put a lot of those links in the show notes so people have super easy access to you. So again, Peter, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. We'll definitely have to get you back on the pod in a year or so and catch up on how old your AI is at the moment from a learning perspective. So thank you very much.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Justin. Good conversation. Good questions. Thank you.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital Podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.